Hey there, kids and cats. Your Inotia King here. I'm gonna try something. Instead of getting out commentary for the Lantern Rite tetralogy we just had, I'm just gonna vlog my analysis. After some of you guys heard my Moon Carver and Zhongli, you requested to hear more of me speaking my normal voice, so I figure this kills two birds with one stone. So, how's this gonna work?
I already forgot.
No, I didn't forget. But yeah, that's basically how this will work. I suppose you could call it a director's commentary track, but I'll be skipping around to the things I actually have something to say, so we don't waste any time. Therefore, first thing. Lantern Rite took place on the same day as Rosaria's birthday. Happy birthday! No, that's not the first thing. Hang on.
Huh? Why would you ask that? Isn't my tone of voice not as sweet and melodious as you're used to?
Definitely not sweet and melodious like I'm used to. More like you got an Inotia King stuck in your throat. That's one nasty frog to have hopping around in there. So, voice acting. If there's one thing voicing both Lantern Rite and Nahida's birthday really pointed out to me, it's just how many more girl characters there are in this game than boys. It's not fun to barely be able to use anything close to your normal voice. But I do appreciate that you guys liked my portrayals of some of them, including the major characters of both, namely Candace and Hutao here. The second thing that became apparent was that it is difficult to differentiate between voices if they don't have any eccentricities. For example, Keqing and Ganyu don't really sound all that different, except that Ganyu is more submissive, while Keqing is assertive. Some of you guys picked up on my distinguishing between them in this way. Jennifer Losey delivers her line with something that sounds like sadness in her tone. Meanwhile, Kaylee Mills speaks with sternness when she's conducting business, and warmth when she's speaking with her friends. Other difficulties with differentiation would be the tough girl. This game has a few of them, and we see a few of them in Lantern Rite alone. Beito and Yelan are both tough Liyue girls, and we get Dihya and Chevreuse for the custom envelopes. Yelan is the easiest out of all of them, because her characteristic is that femme fatale tone, which she shares with Ningguang, though in a more aggressive manner compared to Ningguang's more flirty style. But Beito, Dihya, and Chevreuse are just straight talkers, so to get that tone is to lose any semblance of a girl voice. So that brings me to the last thing that voicing these quests pointed out. It's much easier to work from scratch than to try doing impressions. Back when I was doing the Petrichor World Quest, none of the NPCs had existing voices, so I could just make them up. Also, there seems to be many more guy NPCs, making my life even easier. You guys liked my Boethius too, and it was fun to portray the villainous character. Okay, moving on.
I could never turn down Shenling's cooking.
I take it these coins go inside the envelope? They look a little different from regular Mora.
When I saw Zhongli hold out one of these in the livestream, I totally thought we were getting the answer to the Mora problem from the end of the Liyue Archon quest. I have a feeling not just you guys, but the devs themselves have forgotten about that little detail. I mean, we have these fortune coins, but they also joke about Mora in this event, like, there's no issue with it, even though there is. As of the end of the Archon quest, there is no new Mora in production, and we already knew that Mora is consumed regularly to do just about anything. MatPat from Game Theory brought that up years ago. Mora is a commodity currency, meaning it has actual value. Salt, in the example he used, is actually consumed for its value to Roman soldiers who lose their body's salt through perspiration. Anyway, it feels like a missed opportunity, but it isn't the end of the world. Like many missteps miHoYo's made over the years, I can see another way they can use this to make up for that. It still remains to be seen if miHoYo will figure that out, though, since they don't have the best track record for that. I'm curious about this. I mean, it was a theme in a previous Lantern Rite, but that was dealt with. Ganyu's version of this was also figured out in both her character quest, and I think the same old Lantern Rite. I don't understand why they're bringing this up again and why it became so prevalent. I have a feeling it isn't about Genshin this time, but rather China. And well, personally, I was spending so much time on getting in the voices for this that it really took a toll on me. I'm still feeling exhausted from this. Thankfully, it's just the one project that offset my work-life balance, so under normal circumstances, I think I still have that down. Immortal Combat! Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so here's a nice starting point for lore. I don't know if the right way to pronounce this is rattan, but I learned the word a long time ago and vaguely remember it as rattan, so that's what I went with. That's not really important though, because I'm pretty sure we all know what this is outside of an Asian context. A voodoo doll. By the way, apparently voodoo doesn't actually use voodoo dolls, and instead it was just a construct of fiction based around innate discrimination of the fine folks who believe in voodoo. Awesome. But that's not this rattan figure anyway. Notice how they draw attention to the talisman or seal on his forehead? Anime fans might know this as an ofura, right? Chichi, for example, also has one on her forehead. As with hers, these things are from Taoism and the specific branch of it that you guys might know as onmyodo in Japanese. Onmyo is just the Japanese way of saying yin-yang, so you might be able to guess now what these figures really are. The Shikigami. The ones that are more popular are those that summon yokai and things to fight. That's more fictional. In the real world, though, onmyoji have proliferated the idea that their shikigami are invisible and need to be housed in little figures, usually made of paper. But besides housing yokai, the other thing shikigami can do, if you've ever watched Inotia, is act as a body double. You often see it where some character or villain looks like they've been killed, but then it turns back into a paper or wooden doll. Yeah, that's what we have here. The practice was also Chinese Taoist before it made it over to Japan and became onmyodo, but also influenced local Shinto and the Buddhism that got over there too. Japanese versions are typically paper cutout, sometimes it's origami. Chinese ones are seldom if ever paper dolls, but I've yet to see a rattan figure either. It's usually more like the kukutsu in Inuyasha, a wooden figure. Also, no talismans. So the effect we see in Lantern Rite is accurate, but not the form or the materials.
The 8 adepts rose up to solve the crisis and laid down a great magic array to purify Taodu.
See, this is where localization hits a wall again. Adeptus is Shinren, but these 8 adepts have nothing to do with the term. Adept here is actually Qi, which you could relate to the term Qiguai for strange, or Hao Qi for wonder. This is actually the Qi from Qimen, which until I saw the Chinese, my friends and I totally thought it was Qi, you know, for 7, like, you know, Chi-Chi. This is confounded further by the fact that MiHoYo decided to name that plan of theirs the 7 and 8 Gates method, which is translated correctly, Qimen Ba Men Fa. But this thing is based on real-world Chinese Taoism, and the Qi is once again Qi, not Qi. The 8 gates are exactly as described in the quest, but the Qimen are much more familiar territory, I'd hope. You guys remember the 3 realms gateway offering? The light, human, and void realms? Yeah, it's those. The 8 gates result from those 3 foundational aspects of life and describe human circumstance, like death, and fright, and injury. Those, by the way, are the 3 bad gates, as also described by the quest if you go and visit everybody in Act 3. The 8 gates are actually broken up into 3 auspicious gates, 3 bad gates, and 2 final neutral gates. I think it might have actually been better if instead of finding 4 gates first, that MiHoYo had said Ningguang found the 2 neutral ones on day 1, then the 3 good ones on day 2, before finding the all-important Gate of Death, along with the 2 other unfortunate gates last. Actually...
Right! The 3 hermits of Guizhang, the 2 sages of Lianshan, and the 3 beasts of Taodu.
I wonder if that was meant to be the reference.
Shaped like a huge tree, right?
Good grief. So this was another issue. During the live stream, the subtitles showed Tao Du, and in the event, everybody is pronouncing it Tao Du. So that's what I thought it was, and kept saying it that way. Since I was so busy recording the lines, I didn't have time to check the Chinese until way later. Remember? I brought up how the Adepti crew's conversation probably sounded better in Chinese? Yeah, it was all the way there that I finally had time to check, and it's actually Tao Do, just like you see in these current subtitles. Why was there this confusion? Well, the Do or Du here is this word. This word can be pronounced in two ways, do and du. Since it was spelled du in the live stream, I thought they were going for the du that's used for capital cities, you know, like Chengdu or Kyoto, Jingdu in Chinese. Yeah, it's pronounced to in Japanese. However, normally the word is pronounced do. Oh, and yeah, I'll get to the Adepti's conversation later in the video. Anyway, Tao Do is also a real thing. Well, real as in from the real world fiction, which Lan Yin actually brings up. Mount Taotou, or Taotou-san, was part of an old folktale, and you know something interesting? I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that Lantern Rite was connected to the Natlan Archon quest, right? They bring it up enough times. Well, in the folktale, Taotou is a giant tree sitting atop Mount Taotou. And atop it is the golden rooster, who beckons forth the rising sun, which pushes back the darkness of night and brings hope. Tumaini, the sun motifs of the Pyro Archon, and of course, beating back the darkness of the abyss. Also, its giant size is meant to symbolize a connection between the heavens and earth. You know, after all, its branches would reach high up into the sky, while its massive roots dig deep into the earth. Oh, by the way, it isn't quite emphasized in English, but Taotou was an Archon and yet another one that gave up its power to protect Tibet, just like Marcosius. In other words, Taotou is also Ryue's version of the sacred Sakura. They even gave it an Ars Goetia name, Bune, a duke, just like Habarim, Focalors, and also Barbados and Istaroth. The Qi in Qi Huang is also a totally separate Qi. It's a term to represent herbal medicine. There's no such thing as a Qi Huang sigil, but I guess in a wuxia story, it could be some kind of healing sigil, as Keqing explains. Sigils like Ofuda, again, were used to keep evil spirits away, and those evil spirits were said to cause disease, so I guess in that respect you could see it as catching demons or protecting against death. But it's funny in this context, considering Hu Tao and Baizhou are antagonists of each other.
So it's true? The Wangsheng funeral parlor really does have a secret art?
I heard from Hu Tao that she has a flaming staff handed down by her forebears. Apparently it has special powers used for cleansing rituals.
And doing some crazy damage when your health is low. Might as well talk about Homo then while we're still on the localization issues topic. Homa is the Hindu version of what it is in Chinese. The Homa we're interested in should be written like this and pronounced Humo. It is a real Buddhist secret art and it does relate to fire. Its alternate name is Fen Shaozi, or basically the principle of burning to ash. Remember Natlan's Archon Quest Act 2? Malwika burning stuff away for the power of their memories? That's not quite what's happening with this ritual, but there's more of that Natlan connection. The ritual is basically how it plays out in Lantern Rite, where essentially Hu Tao would have been burned away to protect Riyue against the fetter. There is an added layer in the story of burning away material possessions and leaving no lingering desires behind, which is very Buddhist, but I found nothing about that being part of the Humo or Hindu Homa rituals. In fact, in some versions of the Buddhist ritual, people would actually take some of the ash home to use for its protective powers.
Believed to be where they retreated for cultivation.
So, what were they? Monsters or something?
Monsters here is, by the way, yokai. I know a long time ago there was this huge argument in the Genshin community about the difference between illuminated beasts and the yokai of Inazuma. Yeah, let me just settle that right now. Yokai is a Chinese word, yaoguai. It means monsters. In fact, back in the day, Japan didn't have the word yokai yet, and called everything oni, which is the Chinese word gui, also meaning monster.
Cool.
Over time, China kind of left the mythical stuff behind, while Japan moved into the Edo period and dove headfirst into the mythical stuff. So they ended up really categorizing all these monsters, and yokai became that category, while oni became a very specific yokai. But in the end, yokai is the same as monsters. And here we see that while the three beasts of Taotou aren't necessarily illuminated beasts, Remember back to Cloud Retainer's story how even normal animals can become elevated. You guys know Kirara? She's a Nekomata, which is a yokai cat, but all that is a cat that's lived long enough to grow a second tail and become able to transform into human form. Kitsune are the same thing. The more tails they have, the stronger they are, but they start off as regular foxes. Therefore, illuminated beasts are no different from yokai. At best, the ones we know of are just powerful yokai, like Kitsune Saigu.
They were... Ganyu?
Huh? All three of them?
And no, Ganyu wouldn't qualify since she's half human. But hey, we have something like that in Japanese anime too. She'd be a Hanyo, just like Inuyasha. I don't really know much about funeral stuff even from our side of the world, and I'm not really that interested, so forgive me for speeding through this. One of the only things that I found really interesting was that gloomwood is a real thing.
Yes. His lordship had one made 2 years ago, in fact. He sourced an excellent block of gloomwood.
Its actual English name is the King Salon Ebony, or Diospiros Ebenum Konig. It makes very valuable blackwood, and yeah, that's because of the qualities Hu Tao describes. Another thing I'll bring up is the bats of longevity thing. So this is a thing Chinese is really well known for, and that's the use of homophones. Bats in Chinese sounds like fortune, so they're used as a motif to symbolize fortune, and it has nothing really to do with bats. The longevity part of this is because of what Hu Tao is actually saying in Chinese, which is Wu Fu Peng Shou, or the 5 fortunes upholding longevity. These 5 fortunes are also not bats, but they get represented as bats in the symbol because of the homophone. And yes, the same applies to the cranes and deers thing.
Well, I've heard they practice Chi-Man magic in Tenyu Vale. Pentad fortune conveyance, fate transference, and the like.
Pentad gets brought up again later. That's also a real thing, and the pentad just means these 5 spirits that can change a person's fortune. Or fate, since that's kind of interchangeable in Chinese. And so we go to fate transference. I don't know how many of you guys will remember this, but that's the thing Sheng He's father was trying to do to her. You know, with the black sealy? Real quick mention here. God remains is Archon residue. I think I put up a topic about this a long time ago to both bring up how Archons can't really die, and also that Archons and gods are synonymous. So yeah, God remains is the term 魔神残渣, where 魔神 again is Archon / God, and 残渣 is literally Chinese for residue. Archon residue is the stuff that was injected into Kale, and the Chinese manhua uses that term, the same term. Also, real quick, this is the Crimson Witch of Flames domain, and is the only one that isn't named the same in Chinese. This place is related to Wuwang. Makes it more fitting why it gets brought up here in this quest, doesn't it?
Wait,
Most of you probably didn't have this problem. There's a really old world quest here, and I'm guessing MiHoYo didn't realize there would be players like me who don't do their world quests, so they didn't set up a focus mode for Lantern Rite. I had to complete the world quest on the stage, behind the stage, before I could get to this last part of day 1. It's one of the rare world quests that involves a playable character, namely Yungjing, but as a world quest, it isn't voiced. If it was, I would have included it just because Yungjing isn't voiced for Lantern Rite.
what? Will you listen to yourself? You can't seriously believe all that. You'd sooner convince Paimon that Rex Lapis was a slime.
I found this really cute. I mean, Paimon has slimed on the brain for sure, but in this case we have Nahida's second character quest, so we know this comparison actually works despite Paimon saying otherwise. All elementals are pretty much the same thing, just with different power levels. The Dendro Dragon is no different from a Dendro Slime, except that Epep is far more powerful. And similarly, the Geo Dragon / Archon / God over there is the strongest form of Geo Elemental, while a Geo Slime is one of the weakest.
Wow, Zhongli actually left the house with cash? Now this is a Lantern Rite to remember.
Goodness gracious! Mr. Zhongli, that looks like a very special coin you have there. Is that one of the fabled Rex coins?
Rex coin?
Yes. Look at the design on the face. It's quite different from the typical coins you see in circulation. It appears to be a symbol of Rex Lapis. There's no doubt about it. This is a Rex coin, which means it once passed through the hands of the Lord of Geo himself.
This was really cute too. I mean, Master Liu isn't wrong, is he? Even though it's just a trinket, it literally has passed through the hands of the Lord of Geo himself. It's passing through them right now. But the man wasn't lying. The trinket remained a trinket. Geodaddy didn't leave any part of himself on that coin. It was really just a simple gift. And we learn later on why that is. This whole plan posed no danger to the traveler, and also was part of Zhongli's commitment to not interfere with Liu's human age. Don't read too much into it. Crimson Flames here has nothing to do with the witch. It uses very different words in Chinese. To be fair, at this point in Japanese history, Japan would be celebrating Lantern Rite too. And as I would find out, even though modern-day Japan only celebrates our New Year's, they just carried over all their traditions from the Chinese New Year into the Western one. In fact, there are some that I totally did not expect, like the red envelopes. If you know anything about how Chinese people celebrate Chinese New Year, you probably know about the red envelopes. Well, Japan does this too for New Year's, but instead of red envelopes, it's all kinds of decorated envelopes called otoshidama bukuro. That makes what they're doing here with the decorating envelopes thing way more Japanese than Chinese. Japan also eats sticky rice foods like mochi and share oranges, which are probably less known over here, but they're southern traditions. In fact, a specific sticky rice food consumed for New Year's is niankao, literally year cake, for lack of a better word. It gets translated in English as rice cakes, but it's basically mochi without any filling, and usually cut into slices. It's called ozoni in Japan. Korea has this too, and it's called tokok, and is also a New Year's thing. I bring this up because this is 100% not the northern Chinese thing to do, which is eat dumplings. Japan does eat dumplings too, it's called gyoza, but not for New Year's, as far as I know. That said, there are stark differences too. For example, there's no shrine visits in Chinese traditions, of course. There's no Shinto in China. But as far as I know, there's also no ringing the bells 108 times at the temple, despite China also being Buddhist. And of course, this doesn't apply to Sara here, but as of World War I, Japan plays Beethoven's Ninth for the New Year's. One other thing that is always present for real-life Lantern Rite is the Hanabi. In fact, the opposite is true here. Fireworks are seen as a summer thing in Japan, and anybody that watches anime will know that. The fireworks display for Obon is a classic summer episode event across just about every anime I've seen. That links it with us over here and our 4th of July fireworks. But we do have New Year's fireworks as well. Big ones, given we have New York and their Times Square countdown. And Japan does do fireworks in some places. Meanwhile, for China, they can use fireworks for literally anything. But the big one is for the Spring Festival. So the weird thing about this interaction with Yoimiya is that Lantern Rite didn't have fireworks this year, and that Yoimiya would actually expect them. Except that Yoimiya is lying. See those? Those are fireworks. From the cutscene. Right before Ningguang did the ritual. Yoimiya, you feeling okay? And besides that, big fire pillars shooting up into the sky beats fireworks any day, girl. Seriously, I've seen fireworks multiple times every year for decades. We all have. I have yet to see a giant fire pillar shooting up out of my local parade float. Okay, I'm gonna cut it here because while the similarities and differences are fascinating, this isn't a video about that. And if I were to do it justice, geez, you have no idea how many other places I didn't mention yet. Suffice it to say, Sara and Yoimiya and Chori attending Lantern Rite isn't shocking at all. What is shocking is that they're attending Lantern Rite in Niyue, since the holiday is about being together with family, you know, just like Christmas for us.
How is that possible? Oh, hey, Gaming!
Okay, so the stuff. Given that I was going to voice everything, and you guys know I try to pronounce things accurately, I figured, why not expand on that a little? Gaming is 100% Cantonese, so I figured I'd do any Liyue terms he says in Cantonese. So here's a list of the things I said, along with their Cantonese tones that I don't know anything about. Chen Yu Veil becomes Chumyok Veil. Wangsheng Funeral Parlor becomes Wangseng. Feiyun becomes Feiwan. Baizhu becomes Baksut. Xingqiu becomes Hongcao. And finally, Lianshan becomes Linshan. By the way, I have zero Cantonese. This is all coming from my best attempts at mimicking my Cantonese friends.
Looks like Timaeus is gonna be alright. That's a relief.
Now, on the flip side, there was Timaeus, and I used this Cantonese thing to give myself the excuse to go full gaijin with his Chinese pronunciation. So you get back the ying-ar thing that Brooke Chalmers says when he's talking about his girlfriend. Otherwise, it should be the very northern ying-ar.
Plus, I shouldn't keep Madame Lanyan waiting too long.
Besides Timaeus, there was also French chevreuse, who says dim sum, so I was happy to be able to say it the way I normally say it. Dim sum is also Cantonese, so when Gaming says it, I made sure to do my best Cantonese. Dim sum. And on top of that, Keqing says it, and she's probably a Mandarin speaker, so there is a Mandarin way to say dim sum, and that's dianxing. So there you go. 3 ways of saying the same thing. It's original Cantonese, the Mandarin of the North, and finally full-blown gaijin. But going back to chevreuse, we have the French maison gardiennage, and also gestionnaire. One thing you get from just these 2 French terms is that the G is pronounced differently. Now in English this can happen arbitrarily. We don't really have consistent rules about this stuff, but older languages like French, German, Italian, etc., they do, and as far as I know, they are pretty strict. In this case, the G is pronounced with a G sound if the next letter is an A, O, or U, so you get the other sound if there's an E or I. Therefore, gardiennage because of A, and gestionnaire because of the E. This is also true of the C's in French. If an A follows the C, it's a hard K sound. It's the same rules for G, so the S sound is for E and I words. Some of you guys will know what I'm about to say. It's focalors, not fosalors. In fact, it was also focalors in the original Chinese, not to mention both Japanese and Korean too, so once again, it's a localization issue from English. In fact, it's worse. The French subtitles are likely translated from the English. See, there's a way to get the S sound on a C that's followed by an A. You replace the C with a cedilla. Then focalors becomes fosalors. And that's how it is written in the French subtitles of the game. It's funny, actually. I had a French Redditor yell at me after saying everything I just did because he had misunderstood and thought I was blaming the French localizers for misspelling the name. People on the internet are funny these days. Okay, moving on. Earlier in the patch, a new fan favorite, Citlali, released, and there was another minor controversy. Because of course there was. In this case, it was because there was some official artwork that had Citlali resting on an aether pillow, and some group got mad there wasn't a second version with a Lumine pillow. Just like all the controversies before it, well, the ones these guys inflate anyway, it was groundless. The idea was that MiHoYo was apparently making the Aether Citlali ship canon, and therefore being anti-gay or whatever. That might have worked on some other company, but we're talking about MiHoYo. The ones who have been going hard with Kiana and Mei over in Honkai for almost 9 years. But Genshin itself is not short on gay couples either. We've had Amber and Eula since Eula's release, and of course, this couple, Beidou and Yingguang, had been teased since the game's launch. And while previous appearances by these two have only implied their relationship, this is the first Lantern Rite, I think, where it is just out there. Yingguang is going all out with her flirting, and Beidou just told her to use her salary to go buy herself something special. Not exactly a platonic friend thing to say. This is the least of it, too. These two go on a full-on date, again because of Yingguang hinting at it with her flirting, which Beidou picks up on. They're a really cute couple. Look at them walking by together.
Right! Hu-Tao understands the border better than anyone. Without her, no one has a clue how to handle this situation.
It's scenes like this that made me want to voice Aether for Lantern Rite. Yes, it increased the number of lines I had to record and also the number of roles I had to play, but I mean, come on! Even if everybody's voices were present, this buddy cop thing between these two should have been fully voiced. They have the transitions and everything. There is no such thing as Kavirudaka. The actual deity would be Vidrudaka. I have a feeling this is all nonsense because Virudaka represents growth. Meanwhile, back on day 1, we were introduced to the name Vaishravana, whose name means he who hears everything. You'd think that might work better with what Xiao did. Or, you know what might work even better than he who hears everything? How about he who sees everything? You know, like a witness. That'd be Virupaksa. I'm not pulling these names out of my butt either. Both Vaishravana and Virudaka are members of the 4 heavenly kings. The Chinese here is part gibberish though, so I'm not really sure of the intention. Virudaka, for example, would be called Piliuli, but they added Jia, so it would kind of translate to Kavirudaka, but there's no such thing. Japi together would actually refer to the ancient Indian city of Kapilavastu, or the hometown of the Buddha. Vaishravana is Pishaman, but in Genshin they kept the Pisha part, then swapped out man with 1, and then added Doba in front of it for this mashup of words. Neither me nor my friends could figure this out, but some clever Baiduing, and we found a Bilibili analysis topic. Yeah, by the way, did you guys know Bilibili has pretty much its own Reddit? Anyway, according to them, Doba was an ancient Chinese way of saying Tibet, and as we know, Tibet would be north, technically northeast, of the Indian subcontinent, right? Vaishravana is said to protect the north. Okay, so I went back, and wouldn't you know it? It still doesn't really make any sense. Kapilavastu is south of Tibet, but it's basically at the border to Nepal, so really not anywhere close to the south of India, which is where Vidurdaka protects. Yeah, there's no dice here. I have a feeling MiHoYo wants to have the reference without actually making it like they normally do. Speaking of Vidurdaka, they pretty much gave up on the 4 heavenly kings by day 3. The cross symbol represents growth, right? Well, there's your real Vidurdaka. However, the fact that they went into a bunch of different symbols instead of 4 on this day might mean we're no longer dealing with the 4 heavenly kings, but other groups these guys belong to, like the 24 protection gods. Okay, I actually ruined this in English. The lines were supposed to rhyme, but it only rhymes if I ignore the Chinese, since brow would rhyme with Dao and Tao, but that's not how it's pronounced in Chinese. Dao, Tao. I think they could have tried using only Chinese for the rhyming parts, so just switch out brow with something else. The Chinese rhyming scheme was different too. The first verse about Chi-Chi picking herbs is actually 2 lines. Those rhymed. The next part about finding the temple, or in the English, seeking the Tao, actually doesn't rhyme with itself, because it's the last word of the second line that rhymes with the previous 2, and then the next verse follows a scheme ending in hu tao. The final verse is really long, and is broken up into 3 lines, but also ends in a word that rhymes with the rest. In this case, that would be the words zhao, chao, miao, tao, and dao. Different dao from seeking the dao. To be fair, because Chi-Chi talks in between them anyway, it does still break up the rhythm, but I think that's why the lines work with each other. Here's a cut of just Hu Tao saying the whole thing.
太阳当空照，萋萋去采药。爬上一座山，山上有座庙，庙里有个老道士，名字叫胡桃。胡桃看见萋萋来，一把揪住往土里埋，阎王爷来了都找不到。
The other poem gets all the beats down, but I think it's a little blunt about it. I mean, who didn't get what the poem was trying to say? Yunjin pretty much summarized it for us on day 1. But I think the feeling is lost in English. The original Chinese better illustrates Hu Tao's emotional state, which you can see through the quest. She knows what her role is as funeral director, so she knows she can't have any lingering attachments. But she's a young girl with many friends and plenty left she might want to do, so of course she's gonna have regrets. So what the Chinese poem sounds like gives voice to that helplessness. Duty ties her down to her fate, and she can only accept it. And because of that, Zhongli's final addition to the poem becomes so important. The basic words are exactly the same, but because of the feeling, the purpose of the Chinese line is to symbolize both that Hu Tao will have lingering regrets, and also that she's leaving behind people who won't allow her to sacrifice herself, foreshadowing what happens later with the plum branch she left behind. Anyway, while we're on this scene, I might as well get the other thing out of the way. Live in life, die in death. And then Zhongli's inclusion of follow your heart and do what you can. The English again gets the basic idea, but leaves out the significance, mostly because we don't quite have the same concept in our culture. The first part of it, follow your heart, is pretty much on point. 遵从之心 would translate to follow your heart, but what do we mean when we say follow your heart? It's about going for it, right? Doing what you want to do? Yeah, that's not what's happening here. If you know Asian culture, you know how much emphasis they put on duty and responsibility. Therefore, your heart, as it pertains to them, means to do what you know in your heart is the right thing to do with your life. And that kind of is what the second part is about too, but there's a little more which I found interesting. The first part is just a sentence and can be reworded in a few ways. The second is part of a virtue. The last two words there mean mandate of heaven. The word before that means to know, so basically it's the phrase do what you can, and if you do that, you will know or understand the mandate of heaven. Here you could also interpret the mandate as the natural order or fate. So there's a little something more to it than just do what you can. 尽能之师 is probably better translated as do what you should to the best of your ability. So again, it's about responsibility, only this time it extends to the idea that taking responsibility will allow a person to understand how the world works. And what is that in Genshin? Gnosis. I see what you did there, Morax. And I see what you did there, MiHoYo. See, we have a mandate kind of thing in Genshin too, don't we? The heavenly principles. That is this term. So you can see it isn't quite the mandate of heaven, aka the natural order, but very similar to it. A facsimile. I mean, not really, but in the case of Genshin it likely is. Anyway, the point is Zhongli's guiding Hu Tao towards true ascension, which we already know was his goal since as far back as his release because of his character story 5. And that goes right back to the first part that Hu Tao kept reciting, because you live in life and when you're meant to die, you die. This works on our end too. Think about what it means to not die when you're meant to. Ghosts, right? Having unfinished business? Well, that's a big no-no in Taoism, because it defies the natural order. Okay, let's continue.
Wait, so you've assigned all the gates already?
Sorry, you got here too late.
Alright, let me guess. There's a secret 9th gate for me.
Yeah, people are always saying 8 gates when they mean 9. It happens all the time, right?
I think most of us know about the number 4 in Asian superstition, right? It's a homophone for death. Well, 8 is also a homophone-ish for luck. So 8 is their lucky number. You know, like how we have lucky number 7? But 7 and 6 and lastly 9 are also important numbers too. Actually, the 6th one I think people got acquainted with recently. I read up on that on Red Note. A bunch of Chinese commenters were leaving comments of 666 on people's videos, and that was unnerving them because of what 666 means to us. Well, guess what? 6 just means happy, because it's a homophone for 乐, as in 快乐, as in 新年快乐, or Happy New Year. So the comment of 666 just means the person is really happy to have seen the video or agrees with the video. Anyway, back to 9. 9 has a few meanings. The easiest one would be the homophone for long. You guys know how we have the saying, long time no see? Yeah, that's translated almost word for word from Chinese, hence the odd grammar. So longevity is represented by 9, and therefore what Aether's implying here could be like an inside joke about that. I can't believe they got the opera singer to sing that. It might not sound like the Hello tune we know. It's the Chinese version of what Hu Tao says. I can only imagine what this poor woman would have had to go through if she had to do this in the other 3 languages. But MiHoYo, why did you make this silent in English? Yes, I had to take this line from somebody's Chinese playthrough. You're welcome. Speaking of peaking opera, I don't know if you guys remember it, but the last time Yingjing sang, I pointed out that what she was doing wasn't quite peaking opera, which I believed is why I and most of you guys liked it. Real peaking opera, as I linked to back then, doesn't sound that appealing. I mean, at least not to me, but I don't really like any opera. Well, the version we got this Lantern Rite is full-blown peaking opera. And from what I saw, the reception was still good, so maybe it's just me that's not a fan. Anyway, you can probably notice the difference between her sanctification of Taotou song versus the old Shenghe song.
Huh? What's going on? This doesn't make any sense.
We all knew this would happen, right? Since V3.3, we knew Irminsul and therefore the ley lines didn't record the Traveler and didn't recognize their existence. As Lantern Rite plays out, we actually use this to our advantage. It's something I theorized about back in V3.3 because that's a huge tool for us to use to solve any major problems, and in fact would make most problems in this game moot. But that's not what I'm gonna bring up here. See, Irminsul doesn't record Aether, but it did record Lumine, didn't it? How? Well, in my theory it's because she lost her Descender power and augmented it with Abyssal power when she joined the Order. Something happened with that made her existence known to Irminsul. Well, guess what we recently did? Not Lan? Tumaini? The whole point of getting the ancient name was to get the Night Kingdom to recognize and record us. In fact, by the end of the Archon quest, Tumaini became more respected than even Kiongozi for the Archon. And what did Capitano do? His sacrifice connected the Night Kingdom back into the ley lines. This is why we're dealing with Fetter here in Lantern Rite. So think about it. If Aether is now Tumaini and has his existence recorded in the Night Kingdom, which is now connected to the ley lines of Irminsul, doesn't that mean Irminsul has a record of Aether now? So yeah, this is something I brought up before. I believe that since Fontaine, Genshin replaced their original dev team with a new one. They hinted as much in the 5.3 livestream, but it would explain why Fontaine had so many inconsistencies and why, while Not Lan is better than Fontaine, it also has plenty of issues. And here's some direct proof. By creating a story where we purposely get Aether's existence recorded by a leyline proxy, we undermine the loophole established in V3.3 of him not being recorded by the ley lines. Therefore, just like Lumine, he'd now be affected by the ley lines, and Lan Yin should have been able to connect him to the Rattan figure. Additionally, he should not have been immune to obfuscation. And it isn't like the dev team can just excuse that away. It was crucial to the plot of the Archon quest that Aether was recognized by the Night Kingdom, and it was crucial for the Night Kingdom to be reconnected to the ley lines. The souls in Capitano wouldn't have gone anywhere unless that happened, as explained by the quest itself. Speaking of which, we also know this has to be false too. If Yolhua Takuten could connect us to the Night Kingdom and we know Nahida presides over Irminsul, it only makes sense that their fellow Archon would be able to connect someone to the ley lines as well. But here I think we can excuse it because we know from later that this was the plan. Again, it shouldn't work thanks to what happened in Natlan, but if we once again ignore all the issues with Natlan, then the old lore still does work here. Just like with Nahida's birthday cutscene, I didn't want to ruin this part with my voice. I did voice the next part because I felt it was right to do it in English, even if it was my voice, but thankfully you guys really seem to appreciate it. I'm glad I captured the emotional impact. The other reason why I didn't voice this part though was because the English lines sound so cheesy, and the original Chinese fit better with what's happening. It's like using Latin for our rituals. Nobody here speaks Latin, but imagine doing an exorcism in English.
Time has come.
Hey, check that out. People who watch anime, you guys gotta know what those are, right? Higanbana, the flowers of death. I think you guys might also know what I'm about to say. Yeah, this is another thing Japan got from China. The words hi, gan, and bana are bi, an, hua. There's a thing in Japanese where you dull the first letter of a hiragana if it's the tail end of a term. So in this case, hana for flower becomes bana. Now the overall beliefs for this flower are pretty consistent in the cultures that follow it, but it seems the original folktale has mostly been lost, and that seems to be an ongoing trend. I pointed this out with regards to the very common Japanese phrase daijobu, which literally means big husband, but obviously doesn't mean that in Japanese. So what's the big husband story behind the higanbana? It's actually really cool. Well, really tragic, but cool because it puts all the cultural beliefs into perspective. So the story goes that there used to be a patch of land that was blooming with higanbanas, which at that point had no name. Heaven decreed that 2 servants would take turns tending to the flowers. These were the flower spirit Mansu and the leaf spirit Shahua. This was to explain how higanbana either grows leaves or flowers, but not both at the same time. The story continues that these two began to long for each other since they'd never met, but heaven only allowed one of them per shift. One day they decided to defy heaven and meet, which allowed the higanbana to bloom while still growing leaves, and it was the most beautiful blooming period ever witnessed. And so in Chinese reckoning, higanbana are also symbols of beauty, which is not followed anywhere else. Anyway, because of what they did, the court of heaven forced them to reincarnate and cursed them with lives that would never intersect. From then on, the higanbana would only bloom along the path to the afterlife, Huangquan, which you guys might know as Yomi from anime, or maybe you know it from what Acheron is in the other languages of Star Rail. It gets worse. At the end of each of their reincarnated lives, Manchu and Shahua would find themselves at the Huangquan before crossing over. They'd find these flowers they once tended to and remember their original lives and what happened to them. Heaven had expected, for some reason, that over the many reincarnations they'd get over each other, but instead they became even more desperate to see each other again, and it's explained that the way the higanbana bloom is reminiscent of their extended hands reaching up towards the heavens and begging fruitlessly for the curse to be lifted. This part led to the belief that anybody seeing a higanbana will be able to see their whole lives and reflect. We're literally seeing that right now with those giant scrolls trying to jump scare us. Outside of China, this folktale is where the belief that higanbana are bad omens comes from. Also in Japan, the higanbana is called the flower of regret because of how the 2 spirits were able to see their lives. And it is said to bloom when people see each other for the last time. So why is this not the case for China? There are 2 reasons, so here's the first. Rather than focus on their tragic fate, Chinese people interpret this as the enduring power of love, that even after countless reincarnations, these two still held on to their love for each other and continued to beg the heavens to let them meet again. The second reason comes from a Buddhist follow-up to this folktale that kinda undermines the previous reason. One day the Buddha finds a lone higanbana blossom and also sees the lives of Manchu and Shahua, but instead of feeling sad for them, he laughs 3 times and plucks it. Rather than commenting on the power of love, the Buddha instead calls it the foolishness of desire, which you guys might know is a bad thing in Buddhism. You know how Hu Tao blamed her dad for not being able to let go? Yeah. According to the Buddha, the heavens were trying to impart the lesson of transience to them, and they just didn't get it. Because they couldn't let go, they caused themselves endless suffering. However, he takes pity on them and states that while he can't override their punishment, he can bring the blossom into heaven, which will also carry their spirits there, where they can finally rest. Unfortunately, as he was crossing the Huangquan, the water washed away the red from the flower, which also washed away the memories of the 2. Another name for Huangquan is Wangchanhe, the river of forgetting, or again from Acheron, the Bosen, as in Daiden Bosen Mori Mei. Not only did it wash away their memories, but also the curse. So Buddha laughs again and basically says this outcome was for the best. In keeping with that transience thing, he states that it's better to forget the things that cause pain. Think in terms of ghosts again and unfinished business. It'd be better to forget and let go of it than end up a wandering, vengeful spirit. Anyway, Buddha carries the now white higanbana to heaven where it blooms as the flower of heaven. Meanwhile, the original red higanbana flowers remain alongside the Huangquan as the flower of hell. And this is where the name higanbana comes from, because of higan or bi'an means other shore, as in the 2 flowers will always be on opposite sides, one in heaven and one in hell. Okay, that was heavy. Let's keep going. I brought up how this can't work anymore, but you gotta appreciate the attention to detail. Notice the feather scars appearing on Aether's face because he got Hu Tao to accept transferring her role to him? And then as they appear on his face, they disappear off of hers. Finally, when he successfully pulls her back from the border, the scars also disappear from him because the ritual completed, and he can't be obfuscated, so only the fetter disappears.
Paimon, you're up! It's time to share your grand philosophy of life with everyone. Okay, one sec. Always eat to your heart's content, lest your chopsticks wither in regret.
I can't believe this nonsense even has lore. Always eat to your heart's content lest your chopsticks wither in regret? It's a play on a line from a poem. From a famous poet, too. It's just about enjoying life to the fullest, so you don't regret it. So I guess because Paimon loves eating, and the line came from Xiangling, that the enjoyment is food in this case. The original line is about liquor, though, so no chopsticks. Switch it out for the chun, a wine goblet, which if you guys read my Reddit topics, you might remember is the same goblet that I pointed out looked like artifacts of ancient Peruvian wine goblets. And MiHoYo drew attention to this through the goblet from the Unfinished Reverie artifact set, our first not LAN related set.
It's... you know who...
You should have gone with Traveler into the border that day. I get that you care about the Traveler's well-being, but the fact is, it wouldn't have helped. I'd have just been an extra liability if something went wrong. Besides, Ningguang changed the plan and sent me to the chasm instead. I can't be in two places at once. If you're not happy about it, why don't you file a complaint at Yiqing Terrace? And report the Tianquan to the Tianquan?
I love this exchange. By the way, I think it sounds best in English. I'm really glad you guys liked my Xiao voice, because his line was just the best. I think the attitude and the absurdity isn't quite captured in the other languages. But that could just be bias as an English speaker. Okay, and now we're finally here. I said the original version probably sounded better, and to an extent, this is true. I still feel it's a little awkward, but it's less awkward than what it is in English. So that stuff with Cloud Retainer is still the same. Where it becomes better in Chinese is when they start asking about Hu Tao's name. Since it's all Chinese, there's this way of asking about a word in its native language that makes this conversation not work out in English. When Zhongli goes, her surname's Hu and her given name is Tao, and then Mooncarver's like, Hu as in our word for butterfly? The thing is, it's all in Chinese, so it's not their word. It's just the word for butterfly. For us, you can think of it like, oh, Sarah, with or without the H. Basically, whereas we mostly have issues with communicating spelling, there's no spelling in Chinese, so this interaction happens over words instead. Anyway, then the answer was he was wrong. Zhongli corrects him by saying the Hu is for mischief maker. It's not just because Hu Tao is a mischief maker. The word Hu can literally be used in the Chinese term for mischief maker. And then it continues with Mooncarver having like a eureka moment. Hey, if the Hu is for mischief, then Tao is probably also for mischief. Now this part makes sense for the Adepti to get it wrong because their names are basically titles and they're themed like Mooncarver. And that'll become important for the punchline later. Speaking of which, these two lines about which Tao is Hu Tao's Tao are like 4 words apiece in Chinese, compared to the full-blown statements in English. The localization team had it rough. Seriously, if we translated directly, it would have been Tao like mischief? No, Tao like Tao Tao. The Korean is also unfortunate. They kinda did the same thing as in English, where they used the Hu from butterfly in our tongue, but the Korean for butterfly is nabi, which has nothing to do with Hu, or in the Korean, ho. Now, the Japanese fixed this issue in a cool way, in my opinion. So, for both parts, Mooncarver actually just asks Zhongli how to write her name. In Japanese, Hu Tao is Fu Tao, which already is bad because Fu is how they pronounce that word sometimes, but Tao is just a transliteration of Chinese. In Japanese, it's pronounced To. So how does Japanese Zhongli respond? There's a way to explain how to write stuff in these languages. You can break it up and explain the parts, so in this case, Zhongli goes, Furuitsuki, which would just mean old moon. But the reason he says that is because Furui uses the kanji furu, and tsuki has this kanji. And putting them together gets you Hu Tao's Ho. Of course, this only gets you the written form, which would then be pronounced in Japanese, and kanji have multiple pronunciations, so Zhongli then has to go Fusakeru no fu, or the fu in the term Fusakeru, which is really inventive. See, there is no kanji in Fusakeru. It's a totally Japanese term, but it does mean mischief maker, and it just so happens to have the fu that they needed to explain how to pronounce Hu Tao's name. It isn't perfect because it's just fu, and the fu in Hu Tao is an extended fu. But, I mean, you gotta give them credit for coming up with a localization that both gets the meaning and the pronunciation. Of course, there's something missing here, right? I'll get to that. Going on to Tao, again, the English and also the Korean could only go with the in our tongue thing. And Japanese, again, Mooncarver just asks how it's written. So the Zhonglis go Tao just like Tao Dou's Tao. This isn't clean though, because the Japanese for Hu Tao's Tao is a transliteration, but Tao Dou's isn't. Tao Dou in Japanese is Toto. And in Korean, Hu Tao is Hotu, but Tao Dou is Todo. How did they get around this? Well, the English solution is ignored because none of it made sense anyway. In Korean, what they did was just add the hanja in parentheses next to the hangul. And in Japanese, what they did was say it's the to of Toto, but pronounced Tao. Toto no to de Tao da. Anyway, so then Mountain Shaper for some reason thought it'd be funny to deliberately mishear the explanation, and his line is the same in Chinese. It's weird. It's a worse dad joke than Sino's. But that gets Cloud Retainer in a huff, so she corrects him with a bunch of examples. And again, it works out in Chinese because these examples make use of the word. Going back to the spelling thing, for us, it's like when you go, no, H, like hot dog. In English, it just kind of sounds like Cloud Retainer's insulting Hu Tao, but she's just giving examples to clarify Mountain Shaper's supposed misunderstanding. And then the delivery of Mountain Shaper's next line is tonally off. Since he was deliberately saying the wrong thing, he just laughs off Cloud Retainer's correction, and the point was to get her into a huff. In English, he complains about her reaction instead. This plays out the same in Korean because, again, they did the Nabi thing, even though that didn't make sense. The Japanese localization once again did something interesting. Remember, in Japanese, Mooncarver never provided his own examples, so Butterfly didn't come up yet. Instead, Mountain Shaper just sounds like he's gone senile and came up with the butterfly thing himself. But here's where it's cool. In Japanese, the Hu of Hu Tao is the Hu for butterfly, because they didn't keep the bug particle like in Chinese. But butterfly in Japanese is pronounced kocho, Hudie in Chinese. So Mountain Shaper goes on to say, oh, her name's Ko Tao. Wow, what a nice name. Which then elicits Cloud Retainer's correction. It's further helped by the kind of voice they gave Mountain Shaper. You know, the matter-of-fact sensei type. Ko Tao, ii namae da. Okay, so Cloud Retainer's jab at him. In English, they go Mischief Maker again, and that's unfortunate. But in the other languages, they do something fun, and that was impossible in English. See, Mountain Shaper isn't really the full title. It would just be annoying to say the full title in English, which they do in the other languages. Now, from this giant string of words, we can pluck out the operative words. This would be the Shaper part of Mountain Shaper. So, what was Mischief Maker again? The Hu of Hu Tao. So, they plug that in, and Mountain Shaper goes from this to this. I don't know if this means anything in Japanese or Korean. I doubt it would, but the wordplay exists in its native Chinese, where it'd be something like, the true lord who screws up the mountains and messes with the water flow. In other words, at least in Japanese and Chinese, there are actual laughs to be had. Ko Tao, ii namae da, from Japanese, and now here in Chinese, with the lord that mucks things up. Also, notice Cloud Retainer even flipped the words mountain and water around for some added spice. Basically, this new mountain shaper screws things up so hard, he even screwed up the word order of his own title. I love it. The last thing I want to mention about this whole thing is that this is the first time I really paid attention to the voices. In English, Mooncarver has Zack's deep belching kind of voice, but in both Chinese and Korean it's the opposite. Mountain Shaper has the deeper voice. And in Japanese, they both have super deep voices, and it was actually hard to tell them apart. Also, Cloud Retainer has that strict teacher voice, right? Not in Korean. She sounds gentler, almost cute. And that does it. Yes, there were plenty of cameos, but they don't really say anything I need to bring up. I think I'll just leave comments on them like normal. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my awesome voice in its natural state. I also hope you guys got something out of this video. I'll see you guys next time.